Last night I had the pleasure of sitting on the porch for a few hours with an elder, and we spoke about so many subjects, but there was one subject that kept me up for quite a few hours last night. Then I went on a nice walk this morning and contemplated it some more. It's the Lakota's concept of a hollow bone. And this concept is about, if we're here to serve, be a medicine man, be a healer, then we need to become like a hollow bone. And that means ridding ourselves of our personal desires, our egos, our fears, our biases, our dreams, our shame, our guilt. You know, this is not a concept that's exclusive to the Native Americans or the Lakota. It's a concept that you'll find in almost every religion. For the Christians, they call it being an empty vessel so that the Holy Spirit can work through you. In Islam or the Sufis, it's the same thing, an empty vessel. In Hindu and Buddhism, it's called being a hollow reed. It really is a hard concept. It's an easy one to grasp, or rather a simple one to grasp, but not an easy one to live out. And there's no shortcut. As I was walking this loop out here, there was a small Buddha figure, and on it was a snail on the face. And to me, that snail represented two things. You see, a snail, it moves slow, but it doesn't stop. It continues on its path, but it's a slow journey. And on its back is its shell, its home, which represents that within us is everything we need, our home. And the more that we can empty it, the more we can be within that shell. And it's no irony that it was a Buddha statue, because there's a story. Buddha had his head shaved and was meditating, and it was a really hot day, and 108 snails came and covered his head and his face while he meditated, and that kept him from having a heat stroke. I found that pretty interesting. I think if I'm being really honest with myself, I've always tried to find the most time-efficient way to get things done. In other words, I've tried to find shortcuts or fast routes, trying to find the most logistical manner. And in my contemplation last night, and reflecting back on any time that I had a spiritual awakening and started on my spiritual path, that I never became that hollow bone. And even the elder last night, who's 60, who's been serving the community for decades, shared that he still works on that. And it's a daily process. And it reminded me that that's probably why I continued to go off of the path and have continuous dark nights of the soul. But if my calling is to help the brother to my left and my right, there's a lot of emptying that I have to work on. In all religions and all beliefs, there's a lot of ego. You see it. You're in the church, you can see ego. You're in the spiritual community, there's a lot of spiritual ego, and it seems to be the number one downfall of people that start on the path of healing and to become a healer. Of course, all this thinking and realizing that so many religions and beliefs share common threads lets me know that truth gets injected into everyone, every society. We know it deep in there. It reminded me of a time when I was 22. I went up to Seattle to the Khoisan Buddhist Temple, and I spent some time with a monk. He's still there. His name's Tai Joe. And at that time, I had a stepfather that was a preacher, an uncle that was a Buddhist, another uncle that was a psychologist, a grandfather that was a geologist, a scientist kind of type. And I asked him, being a young seeker at the time, I was like, Tai Joe, what is the truth? Like, what is truth? Is it their belief or whose belief is the truth? And he took me and my brother into a hallway, and there was a massive, bigger than I can draw with my hands, painting on the wall. And he had a small flashlight, and he shut the lights off in the hall. And he went up real close to the picture, and he clicked that light on. And he said, "That's science." And he clicked it off. And then he went to a different part of the painting picture. Said, "That's Christianity." Clicked. And then he came, "That's Buddhism. That's Hinduism. That's atheism. That's agnostic." It's on and on and on and on. And he said, every one of them illuminate a version on this massive picture of truth. And this massive painting represents all of truth. And no human in human form will ever know or see the entire picture of truth. The best we can do is illuminate different areas of truth. But while we're here in this form, we'll never see it. One last story about Tai Joe. I was a young man. I was 22, had my first child, and boy, did I not have it together. I was drinking like crazy. I was going out partying all the time, cheating on the first mother of my children, and I was so covered in shame. Her family hated me. She hated me. I remember them one night saying, "You're a bad person." And I took that on completely. I was in tears. I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to go on because I started to believe fully that I was a bad person. I remember calling Tai Joe in tears and sobbing and asking, "Tai Joe, am I a bad person?" And he took his time to respond. And he said, "Matthew, all humans are like the smoke that rises off of an incense stick. He said, what people want to do though is take a snapshot of that smoke while it's flowing. And a lot of times if it's a blurry, the wind blows, a horrible snapshot, they'll say, oh, that's bad smoke, that's a bad picture. And then sometimes if it's just absolutely gorgeous and they take a snapshot and they say, oh man, look at that incense, look at that smoke, it's such good smoke. But he said that's not the truth. That's not what we are as humans. We are like the smoke that rises, flowing between good and bad always. You could think now in this modern age, when so much truth is being illuminated, we're finding out that there's pastors, judges, world leaders. We've known this for a long time, that we want to take the snapshot of and say they're good, and then we'll find out they do the most atrocious, horrible things on this earth, hurting children and whatnot. And then I can tell you personally, I've spent time in jail, and I have met in there some of the best humans. Not all of them, trust me. But the point of the story is that one action or one deed does not define us. That we can go from empathetic to non-empathetic. We can go from good to bad. And we're never going to stay because we're like this smoke. We're ever flowing. So like the snail, I remind you as I remind myself to take your time to empty yourself of your human desires, your ego, and that there's no shortcuts. You can't fast track this thing. You can't good deed your way out of it. It's a lifelong process.